first talk is Biodiversity, Inspiring Teachers and KS5 Students. This is with Kathy Moore and Dave Waterhouse, Freelance and Scott Polar Research Institute, recently of Norfolk Museums Service.
Hi everybody, it's great to be here. This is my first NATSA conference, but not my first time in this museum. I was in here as an undergraduate and as a PGCE student. I was really pleased to bump into somebody who did the PGCE just before me, a very long time ago here in Oxford, while I was waiting to come in, and they were bringing a group of PGCE students into the museum, which is fantastic that that's still going on. And I hope lots of you also work with PGCE students, and more of that a little bit later. Obviously, having been through that experience and then moving into museums after being a teacher as a learning officer, always I was thinking about doing science in museums, but an awful lot of teachers that I met through the time that I was a teacher didn't think about that. Some of you work in museums that are obviously about science, but other people don't. So what we're particularly passionate about is helping teachers and Key Stage 5 students in particular for today's session, A-level students, inspired and interested in working in museums and learning things particularly around biodiversity in museums. So our story, David and I worked together at Norwich Castle Museum for quite a long time ago, and our story starts around about the time of the redevelopment of the galleries there that I was really privileged to take part in. That was kind of my first experience of working with curators, which rather spoiled me forever, working with David and the amazing Tony Irwin as well. But around about the start of the United Nations Decade on Biodiversity, I was also really lucky to work with some inspiring people that worked with us for the local authority for Norfolk County Council, with the Biodiversity Partnership, the fantastic and really ancient Norfolk Wildlife Trust. Those are our kind of partners who started off this particular project that we were doing, which has run and evolved since then. So just change on to the next. So, and it's one of the projects that I feel has had the sort of clearest multiple aims that I've ever worked in, really. And obviously the first one was to support the study of biodiversity in A-level specifications. All of the partners that started off recognised that that word was there, that concept was there, but teachers weren't necessarily very good at teaching it. There weren't a lot of resources around for that. So obviously we wanted to cover all of the areas that are still there on the A-level specifications. The value of biodiversity, the threats to it, climate change, habitat loss, invasives, exotic species, overharvesting, and exploitation and pollution. And you'll see as this goes on how we kind of looked at those various aspects.
So I can't really take much of the credit for this, actually, as probably most of you who work in museums. It's the education officers who do all the hard work, booking people and getting the schools to turn up. And I've got the luxury as a curator to kind of waltz in and just kind of talk to these wonderful people who are parked in front of me. But really, what the aims of this project, this biodiversity conference, was to treat these sixth formers like undergraduate students, so the next step in their academic career, and treat them like adults in that kind of environment of a conference. And we had, of course, students who wanted to go into biological sciences and subjects relating to natural sciences at university. But also we wanted to capture those students who were going into careers that were linked, but not quite the same. So things like medicine or geography. And it was really about meeting these amazing people who work for these different organisations. So it's a picture of Dr. Tony Leach here, who works at or used to work at school in Norfolk, but is also the county fungi recorder. So getting to tap directly into these experts within the county. And we can see the middle side here, working with Norfolk Wildlife Trust and I think Norfolk Biological Information Service, using museum dioramas to practice recording species. So literally using the museum displays and recording the species as if you were out in the field. And through that, hopefully those people who aren't going into careers in natural sciences would pick up things like volunteering and those kind of ways into the natural sciences and biodiversity whilst doing the rest of their career. So we sort of start off, well, I suppose, on the right-hand side here within the public galleries. As Kathy said, we redid the natural history galleries in Norwich Castle in 2009, I think it was. So really taking the students through that whole process of curating, looking at collections, updating those stories that were last done in the 1960s for a modern audience, and bringing in things like conservation action points, which is Kathy's idea, putting these in amongst the museum displays to really bring those displays up to the present day. So we talked, I think, a little bit earlier about art and science and how that comes together. And I think curation, and especially putting on permanent galleries and exhibitions, is that melding of those two fields. But then on the left-hand side here, we've coming down into the stores and really showing the students what we've got behind the scenes. And I've got a tray of eggs here. Of course, Norwich Castle was amongst the organisations that led to the banning of DDT, for instance. By looking at the peregrine eggs in the collection, you could see a build-up of that substance. But also very local stories. So the egg collection at Norwich Castle was used by the British Trust for Ornithology. They photographed the whole, or representatives of the species for the whole collection, and then that is now in the Egg and Nest Recording Guide for the British Trust for Ornithology. So there is literally a museum collection helping to teach modern conservation and modern conservationists in the field. There's also not just students who came on these behind the scenes tours. Some of the people who were feeding into the conference were there as well. And Kathy can tell you a little bit more about the chap at the back with the beard.
So he was one of our big draws for students, and he was our keynote speaker. Because he's a Nobel laureate, and I think it was the first time ever we had a Nobel laureate in our museum giving a keynote speech. Not that all of our senior management team kind of noticed that, even when I pointed that out to them. I would have thought it was something more important to celebrate, really. But he's one of the very many Nobel laureates in Norwich. It's kind of a bit of a cheat because they've all got the same prize. They've got the Nobel Peace Prize because they're on the IPCC around climate change in working at the Tyndall Centre. But that's Dr. Jeff Price, and a bit more about his work later.
Thanks, Kathy. So then just to go through some really old pictures here, but some of the other things that I talked to the students about in the collections. So herbaria, we've talked a little bit about already. So the Norfolk Herbarium, and looking at stories and how these collections can really help modern biodiversity. So things like some of the reeds within the collection in Norwich, diatom samples were taken off them. They go right back to the 1820s. And by looking at those samples, you can basically work out water quality on the Norfolk Broads for the past 200 years. So something that looks kind of, dry and dusty in a museum, as we all know in this room, is actually really, really important, really useful for science. And then on the right here, really looking at the breadth of natural sciences collections. So we can see Ice Age fossils here, so we can look at climate change in the past as well as the present. The pine marten at the back there was the last but one pine marten ever to have lived in Norfolk. And we managed to, working with another organisation, collect DNA from that particular specimen to look at which modern pine marten populations would be good to reintroduce into the county. Malacology, entomology, the lot. So really giving them a real breadth. And the other thing I do within the stores, so we take them down in small groups, because as we know, museum stores tend to be quite small. looking at bird collections, and I'd often play devil's advocate. I don't think in Norfolk a vertebrate has been shot for the collection for, you know, well over half a century, if not more. But of course, North American museums still do go out and collect things like birds. So playing devil's advocate, is it worth that individual dying for the collection against the study that you get out of that? But also merging in with social history as well. So one of our museum trainees at the time, Molly, has got a beautiful butterfly drawer open here. This is from the Margaret Fontaine collection. And she had this amazing story about her life, which actually, I'll do a little plug here, you can read about in Erica McAllister's new book, Metamorphosis. Out now. Yeah, well, so again, not just natural sciences, but social history as well.
I think there's a theme of really interesting female lepidopterists from the past that's kind of emerging from this. So as well as really centering this conference in the, oops, go back. You'd already changed it for me, haven't you? As well as centering it in the museum work, obviously we wanted some other pools for the students. So here you can see this is Jeff Price's work there at the top of one of the things that he talked about for the Wallace Initiative that he was telling them about. And we also had some really interesting research about humans and elephants interactions, which the students kind of debated as well. But then I really wanted something that would kind of hook in the medical students. So this is some pioneering work at UEA with leafcutter ants and the fungi and the novel antibiotics that are coming from that. So thinking about the sort of real value of biodiversity in terms of health, medical research as well. And then for our wonderful partners, they were really excited about this opportunity to be able to talk a sort of a high level with this age group of 16 to 19-year-olds, who are not the ones that normally come, for instance, to the Norfolk show and do pond dipping, for instance. And they really enjoyed this opportunity to be able to share some of their research work. So there was a big project that happened with the Broads Authority looking at the winners and losers of the different species on the Broads. So that was a very important opportunity for them to do their dissemination. So they were really excited about that, and our students and teachers are really inspired by those things that are going on as well. So here's a picture of it actually happening with the students and the teachers. The teachers were really, I had one teacher who I'd known from when I was teaching with him before, and he'd come for the first couple of years and never actually been on the behind the scenes tour with David. And he sort of came to me afterwards and said, I didn't realise it had all those amazing things and those stories and all the research. And he was really, really fired up. He was kind of more of a cell biologist by training and hadn't realised anything about kind of natural history and so on. So the teachers were really enjoying the experience and feeling really inspired by that as well. And we also talked to them and listened to what they wanted for their students. So we often offered, different years we did it differently, but sometimes we would have a debate in the afternoon around kind of a bit like David was saying in terms of the playing devil's advocate around various arguments over biodiversity. We can give some more details about that, you know, another time if people are interested. We also started doing, as the sort of trend became more, to make the sort of posters, academic posters that students would make and bring along and show to their peers. So that was another kind of way that we were responding to what teachers wanted from the day. And obviously it was new and surprising opportunities for students, that access to the professionals, as we said, and also really useful, hopefully, for their UCAS forms. I think it's not called UCAS anymore, but I can't remember. I think it's recently just changed from that. Okay, and we've already mentioned again, and David was saying about, we decided we would have some art and some poetry involved in that as well. And so we often had a sort of artist come along and do some work with the students, or show off some things that they could look at relating particularly to climate change in our breaks and over lunch times. And we also always finished, the wonderful partner from the Wildlife Trust said, do you think I could read a poem at the end? And I sort of, you know, these are science students. Stupid me. And he did. And if we've got time at the end, I'm going to read you the poem that he read to kind of finish it off. And often people were quite sort of emotionally affected by that. I won't read it now, but I'll just see. Oh, no, we can't wrap up now. If you want to ask me about it, we'll just quickly whiz through the last few slides of some of our fantastic displays.
Yeah, all I was going to say here was, obviously, I've moved from Norfolk Museum Service now, where I was a natural historian and geologist, into the Polo Museum. I say that really fast. It sounds like I'm saying Polo Museum. I actually work for the Polar Museum. So this can be kind of as broad as you like, or you can focus it in on polar species as well, which is hopefully what I'm going to be doing in the future.
And as well as A-level stuff, there's also all of these opportunities, I think, for teaching about climate change in museums coming up. And just there was a meter signal crayfish, and that was the bit around the elephants. Okay, and that's us.
I think we've got time for one question. If anyone has anything they particularly want to ask, or if there's anything online. Oh, Paolo from Up on High.
Hello. Just a quick one. Did you ever give anything back from any of those students to see what they went on to do?
I'll just repeat the question just for the online attendees. So, sorry, Paolo, did you hear back from the students that were involved in the project to see
What they're doing there?
Yes, and in fact, I think on the last one, or the last but one that we did, there was actually one of the people there delivering one of the sessions for the Wildlife Trust who'd been inspired and come to the first one. So that was amazing.
We've actually got a couple more minutes, so if anyone's got anything else, or we can just move on. Or read the poem.
What were tigers, said the child. They were muscled furnaces, said the mother. They burned through Darjeeling. They had tails like a daisy chain of bumblebees. They had paws like the columns of Solomon's temple. They were strong and gentle and could not be humbled, and they weaved themselves through the weft of the jungle. And what were elephants, said the child. They were skin houses, said the father. They had lovely hose pipes that waved at the moon. They looked like your uncle in a rumpled room. They had ears that flapped like sails in the rain. They had tusks that curved like prows of flame. And dolphins, said the child. They were seaplanes, said the mother, slip-streamed by time. They were aquanauts hunting the golden fleece. They were sailing harbingers of surf-smiling peace. And where have they gone, said the child. They have buried themselves in our imagination, said the mother, and the alphabet is chrome and steel. And the plains are empty and the jungle fields, for the world had no need of irrelevant things, gossamer condors with sun-scraping wings. So they put all the creatures in a chromium arc and fired it into the star-crusted evening. And now, on some far distant planet, the tigers are burning, the dolphins are flying with unbridled mirth, and the elephants are waving their lovely hose pipes at the sad, empty earth. Can we go there sometime, said the child, and learn the beautiful alphabet? Sometime, said the mother and father, with tearful sighs. Then they switched off the light in their daughter's eyes.